Oh boy, that's
Oh
exciting.
boy. Yeah. Is this thing on? Tap, 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 tap.
I think I'm here all week.
I hope not. I don't have that much material to cover.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So
Episode 1, week long.
first episode of Perhaps It's Possible, ? And we're going to cover Annabelle and Robert, Haunted Dolls. And as the series goes on, it's going to be a lot of other unexplained stuff, paranormal stuff. Paranormal stuff, unexplained stuff, conspiracy theories, religion, basically anything we can't explain away. Hell, we might even cover like buildings that don't belong in places that they're at. Like those giant stick circles that people find, like the big hoops, like portal looking things that they find in the middle of the woods for no reason.
Unless there is a reason.
Yeah, but that's what always gets me is people like, it's a hoax. A hoax? Yeah, you know what, dear? I'm going to go out about 10 miles back into that forest, just make a giant hoop of sticks, and walk away.
Why are you going to do that? Why not?
Just to fool people.
Just to mess with the populace. Because
crop circles I can see being a hoax, but the giant circles of sticks in the middle of the forest?
Right.
Okay, anyway, let's get to this because, Annabelle. Which actually is nothing like the movie. I know, I'm disappointed. I don't know about you. I wanted to see, I wanted to read about things flying around the room and, possessions and all this fun stuff, but not so much. As a matter of fact, Annabelle wasn't even a porcelain doll like the movie. It was actually a Raggedy Ann doll.
Really?
Yeah, it was a Raggedy Ann doll, apparently handmade, all that fun stuff. Depending on where you read it, she was 28-year-old nurse who got it from her mother as a birthday gift back in 1970. And everything, okay, whatever. Things seem normal. It's just a doll, right? You aren't going to suspect anything weird from just, a Raggedy Ann doll. So she puts it on her bed. Whatever. I guess that's what you do with dolls. Stuffed animals. So she puts it on her bed. And she starts noticing gradually over time some weird stuff about it. Like it would change positions on the bed. Or, she would leave, come back, and the doll's leg would be crossed over one of the other ones. Or it would have fallen over on its side. Which, again, falling over I could see because you set things up, sometimes they fall over.
Right.
The leg, on the other hand, is a little bit weirder. When it really starts getting weird is they would start finding sheets, like wads of parchment paper around their apartment with messages that say, help me or help us. And they could never figure out where they came from because parchment paper wasn't something they kept in the house. Which who keeps parchment paper around?
Right.
I mean, we keep some like baking sheets around, but parchment paper is kind of one of those things you've really got to look for to find and have around. From there, it escalated to the doll changing which room it would be in. Like she would go in her room, the doll would be gone, and she would go looking for it, and it would be in a completely different room altogether. Which, freaky enough until it started looking like the doll was bleeding. Yeah, exactly. Why Raggedy? A porcelain doll, okay, maybe it's got something in it that's just, the porcelain's sweating and it's something in the porcelain is sweating out. But a Raggedy Ann doll, why it would do that, unless somebody's playing a prank, and that's a pretty sick prank.
Right.
Okay, the next part of the story, there's two different versions depending on who you ask or what you read. Um, One version says this guy is a male friend who happened to be taking a nap in the apartment, and when he woke up, he felt like he was being strangled, and the doll was looking at him. And when he finally was able to free himself, he felt something on his chest, and when he looked, he had really deep scratches across his chest. Like, visible, nasty scratches that I guess after a couple of days went away, which isn't uncommon with, hauntings or violent type hauntings.
Right.
The other version of this part of the story, the guy's name was Lou. He was the nurse's boyfriend. They heard some rustling, and they thought somebody had broken into the apartment, so they went looking to see what was going on. They couldn't find anything, but they noticed the doll was on the floor face down. So he picked it up, he puts it back on the bed, and within like 20 minutes, his chest starts to burn. He looks, and he's got those big scratches across, which, again, within, a couple of days, were gone. It got to the point where they thought, okay, maybe as weird as this would be, and as weird as everything is that's going on, maybe somebody's breaking in. Maybe somebody's playing a joke on us, leaving these notes around, moving the doll around. Why somebody would do that, who knows? But if you watched yesterday, my news, why do people do what they do, The guy I was talking about yesterday pooped in the freezer section on a bunch of pizza rolls. Why would somebody do that? Who knows? Why would somebody break into somebody's house and move their doll around and leave weird notes? I guess I would prefer to believe that over thinking, hey, the doll I got for my birthday is possessed and trying to kill me.
Right.
And honestly, I would probably think that before I would think my doll is possessed. So once they managed to convince themselves that this wasn't what was happening, they called in, they went and they found a medium, which is going to be a whole nother show. And I'm not saying I believe in mediums or anything, but somebody who claimed to be a medium. She came in, they did a seance, and the medium claims that she got in touch with the spirit of a little girl named Annabelle Higgins. Apparently, Annabelle Higgins was supposed to be the name of a young girl that lived on the property before, the apartment complex was built and all this other stuff. And everything I found didn't really say when this medium claims this little girl was supposed to have lived there or anything else, just that it was a little girl who happened to live there. She died at the age of 7. And apparently she was now possessing the doll. Now, my question, before I get on with the rest of the story, is if there was the spirit of a 7-year-old girl, why did nothing else happen until that doll was there? Okay, it's a doll. Maybe the spirit of a little girl would connect with the doll. Like, oh, hey, it's something I'm familiar with, something I want to play with. But why the notes, the scratches, the strangling the guy, if that's what actually happened? It's a little weird.
Well, I mean, supposedly spirits, no matter how good of a person they were in life, supposedly spirits are just kind of angry little bastards no matter what. So
yeah,
but at the same time, yeah, like there had to be some other doll in that apartment or in that building
At some point,
or
yeah.
this Raggedy Ann doll shows up.
Yeah, that's why the whole thing it just and like it's just when it gets to the end, it'll kind of make you wonder about this whole claim of this little girl named Annabelle. But apparently, this little girl's spirit told the medium that she felt really comfortable with the roommates, with the two people living, the women living in the house. She just wanted to stay with them. She wanted to be loved. Like a little girl would want to be. Again, why the notes, the scratches, the weirdness.
Right.
It's if you just want to be loved, why would you say, "Hey, help me"? Here's where things get really stupid. Anybody who has any interest in the paranormal knows if you invite something in, you're going to get something, and it's usually not going to be what you think it is. They invited the spirit of the little girl to stay with them and inhabit the doll, which made things worse. Surprise, surprise. It was at that point things where they said, you know what, we can't deal with this, and they called in the Warrens. The Warrens came in, investigated, and concluded that it wasn't a little girl. It wasn't even a human spirit that was at work. It just happened to be the doll that they said it was a demon was using to interact with everybody around him. So they did some more investigating, and it doesn't. Everything I looked at never really says what it was that they did while they were there, but apparently they witnessed enough where they said, you know what, we're going to take this thing, we're going to get it out of here for you. And the priest that they had with them told them, if you take it out of here, avoid the highway, because you're going to be in trouble if you take it on the highway. Because you're going against whatever this thing wants, taking it out of the house, because that's where it wants to be. The priest was right. Lorraine Warren claimed that the whole way home, the brakes on their car failed several times. The car stalled several times. And apparently they almost crashed several times because of this while the doll was in the car with them. So Ed pulls over, takes some holy water out of his bag that he uses as a toolkit, and threw it on the doll. Immediately, car problem stopped. Yeah, little weird. I mean, if everything up to this point is factual and he throws holy water onto it and that ends it, it's kind of convincing if you believe everything that leads up to it.
Right.
When they get home, they put the doll into Ed's study because they didn't really have a place for it, because their intention was never to bring it back when they first started this. So that's where they put it, his study. So that's when they started seeing the doll allegedly levitate and move about the room. Which, again, I've got nothing to compare this to because it didn't really, anything I saw didn't say anything about the doll levitating or, moving where anybody could see it.
Right.
But if it's pissed off, whatever it is, it's going to let people know, I would guess. So they took it to a building outside the house where they had an office. And until they could make a place for this doll, and the doll would keep turning up in the house. And it wasn't just turning up inside the house. They would go by the office and they would hear footsteps. They would hear the sound of the office being torn apart. Um, and, just a lot of weird stuff around that outer office until Ed finally went out and, again, threw holy water on it, which apparently finally calmed it down again. Now, the stuff, you've heard the facts of the actual story, which, of course, the movie exaggerates, adds to. There's stuff in the movie like the doll's owned by a young couple. It was given to the nurse. It was given to the wife to add to her doll collection, which this woman didn't have. The woman was supposed to be pregnant. There was Satanists involved. They stabbed the woman. All this extra stuff that absolutely had nothing to do with the real story. And the Warrens said that they were fine with this, which if I were involved, I think it would piss me off that they involve Satanists and, stabbing and...
Right.
But the Warrens said they were okay with it because it warned the public about demons. Which, as much as I want to believe, it makes it hard for me personally to believe that when they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's been embellished. How much else have they embellished, in their attempt to warn people?
Right.
And I hate saying that, but so finally they found a place for the doll. It's still in the Warrens Occult Museum. It's in a glass case with wood trim. It's got, if I remember right, it's actually surrounded by salt. There's a sign on it that says, absolutely do not touch. And it's got the Lord's Prayer hand engraved into the wood as an extra precaution. Now, there are stories of people who have doubted the power of Annabelle or whatever it is that is using the doll as a means to interact with the world. There was a motorcyclist who, decided he was a big shot, badass motorcycle, owner. And he laughed and reached over and touched, knocked on the glass, kind of mocking it like, hey, are you in there? Finished looking around the museum, got on his bike with his girlfriend, started the ride home, and within like 2 miles, crashed his motorcycle into a tree and died.
Oh.
Yeah. Apparently there's 2 other near-death experiences attached to the doll. From people that wouldn't listen. There was a priest who decided to make fun of the doll. Literally was standing in front of it while Ed was warning him about the doll. And he laughed like, whatever. It's, you're exaggerating all this other stuff. On his way home, the priest, again, near fatal car accident that absolutely totaled his new car. And he claims that when he looked into his rearview mirror just before the accident, he saw the doll. But things are, before Ed finally passed away, apparently he would go every once in a while into the museum and say a binding spell over the doll just to make sure that it stayed put. But that's Annabelle. That's the quote unquote true story of Annabelle, the one that Hollywood didn't embellish, that Lorraine still tells people, and it's pretty unchanged. So that's the one everybody goes with as the facts behind the doll.
I mean, the fact that it hasn't changed a whole lot in
Since the 70s, yeah.
So that gives it at least some credibility. Not saying I believe it, not saying I don't.
Right.
Not obviously not trying to persuade people to believe it or not. That's entirely up to people to decide. But I think that most of the time, if somebody makes up a story or makes up a lie, somewhere along the line, things change, details get changed. And people can easily debunk it. But
well, speaking of that, there was a skeptic who, and we talked about this before we went live, who kind of makes me wonder about not just the whole thing, but let's assume everything the Warrens claim is true. Just for a minute, let's just claim everything. Assume all those claims are true. The medium is the one that said it was a little girl named Annabelle. 5 years before this was all supposed to have happened, there was an episode of The Twilight Zone called The Living Doll. And he points out that the name of the mother in that episode of The Living Doll, where the doll is supposed to come to life, the mother's name was Annabelle. And it really seems coincidental that just 5 years before that was a highly popular show with an episode of a living doll, and one of the characters' names was Annabelle.
Yeah. That does definitely seem a little suspicious.
It makes me wonder about the whole thing, but like I said, even if you take the Warrens at face value and say, yeah, okay, their story is true, what about that medium? Was she influeed by this? Was she even a medium, or was she just blowing smoke up their ass and using that episode as fuel?
Yeah. Well, we may never know.
Honestly, I don't want to find out. I'm not going to risk it. I'm not going to go to the Warrens Museum and mock Annabelle and find out. Annabelle can stay behind her glass, and I will happily stay far away, just on the off chance. I'm not going to tempt fate.
Right. Yep.
I mean, near fatal accidents and fatal accidents. Yeah, it's a coincidence. Is it real? I don't want to find out. I will live my life never knowing.
I find it very interesting that there's reported to be fatal accidents involving Annabelle, because Robert, who I'm going to talk about here in a minute, who is supposedly one of the most haunted dolls to ever exist, has no deaths reported to be connected to him. Broken bones, divorces, car loss, homelessness, anything else. People have been paralyzed, but nobody has died and said it's because they mocked Robert.
Did you say Maddie?
Horrible other crap happened, but never died. I just find that interesting.
You see, that's funny because I happened to see a bit of a show where they actually had Robert on it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And before they would put him on the show, they actually asked, because I believe that's part of it, is you have to ask permission to film him. You don't mock him, you don't take his picture without asking. But they mentioned a lot of bad luck, but they never said, hey, there's no death. So you got me curious to find out what exactly has happened.
Yeah, well, a little background on Robert. The origin of him is a little muddled, like where he actually... So his original owner was a artist and author named Robert Eugene Otto. He lived in Key West. He was given the doll in 1904. Some people say it was a gift from his grandfather. Some people say it was a gift from a Bohemian slave who had recently gotten fired, and as a peace offering, gave this doll to Robert. I also found some things that said that the slave gave the doll to the grandfather, and the grandfather gave it to Robert.
So, before you go on, the doll's name was Robert, and he was named Robert.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Getting there. So this doll was originally manufactured in Germany, and it was not originally like the it's famous that it's in a little sailor's outfit. It was originally not. Originally, it would have been dressed as like a clown or a jester. And it wasn't actually intended to be a toy at first. It was just designed to be a window display for this company. I don't remember the name of the company, but it's the company that actually originally made the teddy bear named after Theodore Roosevelt. Which I did not realize that was a German company. But yeah, apparently it was. Yeah, so the sailor outfit that he now wears was actually, it is thought to be one of little boy Robert, the human boy, one of his outfits. Shortly after he was given the doll, and he would take it everywhere with him. And I mean everywhere. Like, he was never apart from this thing. He would start talking to it. His mother would hear him in another room behind a closed door talking to the doll talking back, and just, assumed, like most little kids, he's doing both voices, talking to his imaginary friend. Well, one day, the little boy came up to his mother and was like, he wants my name. His name is Robert. He wants my name. And the little boy started going by Gene instead, using his middle name. So Gene would blame pretty much any mishap on the doll Robert. Something would happen, and it became a very common phrase to hear in the house. Robert did it. And Eugene, or Gene, continued this into his adulthood. Like, he married a woman who apparently was okay with his weird obsession with his doll. And he would still blame stuff on this doll, saying Robert did it. Some people believe that the doll got its powers from this Bohemian slave girl who used locks of Otto's actual hair and sewed it, as the doll's hair, and put a voodoo curse on it. Some people believe that it was the little boy's belief that this doll was real that actually brought it to life, similar to the idea of a tulpa, which we'll discuss in a later episode. But yeah, so it's not one of those things where somebody can pinpoint and be like, hey, this is what caused it. Kind of like where Annabelle, they invited this thing to live into this doll. We don't know what caused Robert to happen. In 1974, both Gene and his wife had died, and the house, as well as the doll, passed on to a woman named Myrtle Reuter, who did not like the doll. She would locked it in a oak chest in the attic and just stored it there. Guests would come over and report hearing giggling and footsteps coming from the attic. And at one point, the Myrtle's 10-year-old daughter found the doll, liked it, decided she wanted to keep it. So brought it down into her bedroom, and shortly thereafter, within like a couple days, she was starting to have night terrors. And one night she woke up claiming that the doll threatened to kill her. I found, throughout my research, I found only one spot or one story that talked further about that night. And it was reported that some of the other dolls were being torn apart, and the dog actually was, the family dog had the phone cord wrapped around the dog's neck really tight, supposedly by Robert. But again, that I only found that in one thing, so who knows if that was actually a thing or if that was just that website embellishing stuff. But and it got to the point where people actually talking bad about Gene in front of Otto would change Robert's expression. Sorry, talking about Gene in front of Robert. There was one guy who reportedly was talking about Gene and his relationship with the doll, and said, he was just an old fool, and looked over, and instead of just the blank expression, Robert actually had an angry expression on his face. I don't know how that works. I've seen pictures of Robert. He doesn't have much of a face to express things, but at the time he may have, because at this point his face is kind of degraded. There was a infestation of silverfish insects at one point. That's why the doll's face is heavily scarred and looks like it's basically just been chewed on, because essentially it was. Myrtle had claimed that Robert would be moving around the house. She'd have him in one room. She'd walk away, go into another room halfway across the house, and all of a sudden Robert's in that room. Sometimes his legs would shift. He had his right leg cross over his left. You turn around, turn back, and it'd be the other way around. So after about 20 years of this strangeness going on, Myrtle decided to donate the doll to a museum. So she donated it to Fort East Martello Museum down in Key West, where Robert still resides. It's a stop on a ghost tour now. And the whole museum, I would love to go visit. It's really creepy. It's an old abandoned fort that they turned into a museum. So it's kind of creepy. But in 2015, they made a movie based off of him called Robert, which I really want to look up and actually see, because I've never seen it, never even heard of it until I was doing this research. But there's also reports that he's actually the inspiration behind Chucky in Child's Play. I don't know how accurate that is. The director and the screenwriter has never said that directly, but it is believed to be. The doll, believe it or not, has fans. And you can write to Robert. You can email him. You can write him a letter. And the curator of the museum tries to respond to every child that writes to Robert. She acts as what was her name? Her name is Corvetto is her last name. She is his proxy. She will respond to letters, respond to emails. She tries to respond to every child that writes them, especially in some circumstances. Like there was one where a child was getting bullied, and she wrote to Robert asking Robert to help her and to, discipline her bullies. So the curator responded. I was unable, unfortunately, to find out what she responded, whether she actually was pretending to be Robert or was just, giving some advice. As of 2015, because that was the latest stats I could find. So, 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, Robert was getting 1 to 3 letters a day. And I'm sure that's only increased. The majority of the letters are apology letters for written by people that disrespected Robert or did not show the proper respect in asking permission. The standard is when you go to visit Robert, you greet Robert, you ask for permission to photograph him, you take your picture, and you walk away. You don't stay after. You don't take the picture and, then stand there talking to him, whatever. You walk away. Right after you take the picture, you leave. So there's been quite a few people that disrespected Robert or did not follow that. And they, had broken bones. They got divorced. There was one guy who I found who had disrespected Robert, And shortly after he left, within a couple days, he found out his wife was cheating on him. Then he went to go divorce her and found out due to a clerical error, everything was in her name. So she got everything. And he basically ended up moving back in with his mother and he wrote Robert an apology to apologize for disrespecting him and asking him to let him get his life back together. Within like a week, he met a woman that a year later he was married to. So take it as you will. Yeah, and some people ask for advice. Some people ask for to put hexes on people that have wronged them. And I also found that back as of 2015, Robert had received around 1,000 emails in the 20-ish or 1,000 letters or emails in the 20-ish years he'd been at the museum. Again, that was 6 years ago, so I'm sure that number has gone up drastically. But the museum actually, some of the letters, the museum will actually save or print out and post near the case that holds Robert, and they catalog every single one. So all over 1,000 of those letters and emails have been saved and cataloged. Supposedly Robert has a sweet tooth, so people will send him candy. People will leave candy at the museum, much to the curator's dismay. She has gotten record saying, I understand people want to appease Robert, but we are a museum. We are a professional setting. But yeah, people have left things like candy. People left money. There's been multiple reports of people leaving joints because apparently Robert wants to smoke some weed. Yeah, and as a precaution, the staff never eats the candies or food that's left. Now, I want to know, do they not eat it because it could be poisoned or what have you? Or do they not eat it because they're afraid of disrespecting Robert by eating his candy?
It's funny because that actually seems to be kind of a common theme in some paranormal beliefs is I don't know if you know about ghost bread.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's the same thing. You don't eat it. And the reports are if you do eat it, it's got absolutely no taste and you'll end up sick. So maybe it's a combination of the two. Who wants to take that risk?
Right. Yeah, but so the curator, in addition to being his proxy, once a year, she will remove him from the case and inspect him, make sure, the fabric or whatever's not degrading, make sure the straw's still intact because he is stuffed with straw. And she'll weigh him, just to make sure that the humidity in Florida is not messing with the material he's made of or the straw. And she'll put him back in the case and reseal the case. Robert has a little doll with him. Some people call it a dog. Some people call it a lion. Looking at the pictures, I can't tell what this thing's supposed to be. But supposedly, one of the groundskeepers, shortly after Robert was donated to the museum, was seeing that weird things were happening. Middle of the night, all the lights would go on, which apparently, in order to do that, to turn every light in the museum on at the same time, you would need a minimum of 8 people strategically placed and communicating with each other to do it. And this groundskeeper would apparently be the only one around, or there'd only be, a couple people there with him. So to appease Robert, and somehow this guy figured out Robert just wanted attention and wanted to be seen. Because at the time, Robert was just in a back room, in a storage room, because they hadn't done a display or anything for him yet. They just put him in the storage room. He had just been donated. So the groundskeeper created the glass case that Robert currently resides in. He built the little chair and footstool that Robert sits on and uses, and he made this little doll for Robert to have to feel superior to. Yeah. So I lost my train of thought. But yeah, that's essentially the story of Robert. Like, he was seen to be moving every now and then. His expression would change. I couldn't find anything going into real specifics or details about the things that were happening that were getting blamed on Robert. I was really surprised considering he's supposed to be one of the most haunted dolls in history, and I could not find that much information on him. It's all pretty sparse.
Yeah, that was the same thing I ran into when researching Annabelle. It's all the same story, so it's kind of like we said. Once you find it, and it kind of just repeats on everything. So, but I found the same thing when I was researching Annabelle.
Yeah,
that you said about Robert, and it was in reference to Robert that the story of Chucky is probably inspired by Robert, which struck me as weird that it was brought up because Annabelle and Robert, as far as I know, have never been in the same location at the same time. And the only connection they have is the fact that they're both supposed to be haunted.
Right.
But
yeah. But yeah, so supposedly Robert is so haunted that if you even see a picture of him, like on the internet, and you stare into his eyes, he's gonna curse you. So I made sure not to stare at his eyes in any of the pictures I saw, just in case.
Yeah, why risk it?
Risk it.
Yeah, that's one of those. So, what do you consider yourself? Are you a believer? Are you a skeptic? Somewhere in between?
So I definitely believe that there's stuff out there. I definitely believe in ghosts. I believe in supernatural. I believe, in demons and possession. Do I believe Robert and Annabelle are possessed? I don't know. Just because everything is so muddled between the facts and the Hollywood interpretations. So it's hard to kind of separate fact from fiction at that point and really say concrete if I believe in them or not. But I definitely would say I'm a believer in the supernatural.
See, I'm kind of. I like to be able to explain things, and if there's a logical explanation, I'm all for it. If somebody's moving those dolls, oh, okay, whatever, makes sense to me. But if they're moving on their own, okay, I want to know why. That's where I come. I know there's a logical explanation for a lot of the things that happen around us.
Mm-hmm.
It's to the point where we run out of those explanations and it becomes the unknown. That I throw my hands up and go, okay, I don't know. I can't explain it. And until it can be explained, I'm open to suggestions. And with these dolls, do I believe they're haunted? I don't know. Probably some of what happened was coincidence, like that motorcycle with the guy that wrapped himself around a tree. Maybe that's a coincidence. Then again, I can't prove it. So maybe it was whatever's connected to that doll.
Right.
It's kind of show me the proof and then I'll believe you. But I'm not going to say I don't believe, but I like the proof.
I definitely, like I said, I definitely believe in the supernatural. But at the same time, like, if you think, if you tell me, hey, this place is haunted, I'm gonna go find out. I'm gonna go and be like, hey, is it actually haunted, or is it just your pipes making noise and you think it's haunted because you didn't bother to go check it out? So I'm definitely gonna investigate and look into, is there a logical explanation for it? And if I can find a logical explanation, then, there you go. But I'm not gonna just go in and be like, no, it's definitely gonna be this. There's no way there's a ghost walking around your house.
Yeah.
I've seen too much weird shit in my life to just dismiss the supernatural completely. So
Yeah, that's my stance. I've seen and had enough happen to me where I've tried to explain it away most of the time, and a lot of the times I can. But there's always like that 1% that I'm like, I can't explain it. So I have to assume that it's something we just can't explain yet.
right.
There's something beyond what we all think we know. If that's ghosts, then it's ghosts. I mean,
We were watching.
What? For making
You and I were watching one of our buddies stream, and one of the chatters was talking about fourth dimensional beings. Who knows?
yeah,
Maybe that's what ghosts are. Maybe it's just a being in a parallel dimension that's just off of ours that we can't normally see. And every now and then they find a thin veil and
Yeah.
we can see them, or they move a doll. Who knows?
well, you know where I stand on that because I wouldn't even talk about it. I was like, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to type it. I'm done. I've got a healthy respect for the things I can't explain because if I can't explain it, I'm not going to take the risk of attracting the attention of things that I can't explain because if I can't explain it, I have no control over what it's going to do to me.
Right.
Lightning, we can explain lightning, okay? Way back when, yeah, that was magical. That was from the gods. You couldn't explain it, and you were in fear of it. Now it's lightning. Okay, I'll just get inside, and I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's electricity. Whatever. Until we can explain that and know how to avoid whatever that might be, I'm gonna be like those guys huddled in the cave, afraid of the gods' lightning.
Yep. I think that's one of the things that is going to be great about this podcast is we both have a very healthy respect for the things that we can't explain. Yeah. I mean, yes, there's going to be some stuff that we talk on the show that we definitely don't believe in. Like absolutely 100%. I don't believe this is true, but I'm still going to have a healthy respect for the parts of it that I can't explain away. Like with Robert, I can't explain away the guy that got a divorce within a week of seeing Robert and disrespect him. I can't explain that. It could just be a coincidence, but I can't say for sure. So I'm not going to push the boundaries and I'm not going to test it.
Yeah, that's like with Annabelle. The only thing we've got to go on with Annabelle is what the Warrens and that priest have to say.
Right.
And, some might claim the stuff afterwards once they got it there, the accidents and near-death accidents were just coincidence. I'm not prepared to say either way. I'm not going to risk it.
Right.
If it's true, I'm not going to go screw myself by saying, oh, yeah, it's all fake, whatever.
That's another thing I find interesting about the difference between the two is there was never, as far as I could find, there was never a priest or anything called to look into Robert. The Warrens were never called about him. I find that interesting that there never seemed to be any real investigation into Robert.
What got me is when you were talking about the silverfish infestation, it got me thinking, and I am not advocating this in any way, that nobody tried to destroy them at any point while this was going on. Nobody was like, well, maybe we just destroy them, it'll be done.
Yeah.
I mean, Ouija boards, which we'll talk about at some point, I'm sure. Ouija boards constantly, you hear it, oh, well, we'll just burn it, we'll be done with it. Nobody thought about that with these dolls.
Right.
It just strikes me as a little strange.
Sorry.
Like, how do the Warrens, did they put Ouija boards in their collection? Like, oh, these things are, this one's super haunted, we got to put it aside.
Right. Yeah. And another thing, when you were talking about, Ed Warren putting the holy water on Annabelle a couple different times, why not just fill a tank with water, have it get blessed so it's a tank full of holy water and just dump her in that? Leave her in there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Leave her behind a glass, just a thin piece of glass with the Lord's Prayer written around it in wood.
And a warning not to touch, yeah.
Right.
Because somebody's going to try it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's so weird because I know that in later episodes of this, we're going to be like mocking some of the things we're talking about. Like for me, it's going to be flat Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to like the paranormal stuff that we can't explain away right away, easily, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so interesting is that we may never know.
Right.
The only thing we've got is, testimony from the witnesses. More modern times, we got camera footage. And the
These can all
handful of
be-
people out there that go,
options.
hey, you know what? I can talk to spirits. Can they or can't they? That how do you prove it?
Right. Yeah, that's certainly something you can prove. But and even with the video footage, that can be doctored.
Especially now, it's too
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, that can easily be manipulated to show what you want or not show what you don't want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
get
why
down.
I think it's important to note that for anybody who's watching this far into it, that's how we're going to approach this stuff. Is it's going to be a healthy dose of skepticism, but also a healthy dose of respect, because there are things we may present the information we may think we know, but at the end of the day, we don't know.
Right.
Except for stuff like flat Earth.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Pictures of the globe could be faked.
It's always a fisheye lens. Always. That's always the excuse, fisheye lens.
Yeah. Well, not to get too far into the flat Earth stuff,
Yeah.
because that's not this episode. But I remember reading online the Flat Earth Society posted, we have members all around the globe.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, really? Read that again.
My favorite argument I saw was on TikTok. This guy saying, God never intended us to get up this far, so he never expected us to take pictures of this.
Huh.
And my only thought was God is supposed to be all-knowing, all-powerful, but he never expected humans to be able to get that far to take pictures.
Right.
That is just a giant gaping hole in your logic, because that's he's religious, and that's what he was basing his whole flat Earth theory on, was his religion. And I was like, I don't know which one you're shooting holes in worse.
Right.
Which again, both will be topics: religion and flat Earth, and conspiracies, aliens, ghosts, cryptids. What else?
Oh, everything. Anything weird or supposedly unexplained.
Yes.
Like I said, we'll talk about the Tulpa. We'll talk about Bigfoot, I'm sure, on probably more than one episode.
Definitely.
Loch Ness Monster.
Loch Ness Monster, yeah.
We're
Stonehenge. We got to cover Stonehenge, because so many theories about Stonehenge.
Mm-hmm. Oh, big time.
And I'm still baffled about how they moved those stones.
Yeah.
Constantly hearing it was they rolled them on logs, but do you know how many logs and how worn out they would be by the time they got them from point A to point B?
Right. Yeah. No, it's aliens, man. It's got to be.
Got to be aliens. I also, to throw it out there, because this is the kind of thing that's going to be coming. I read somewhere that at one point people were so in touch with the use of their inner energy in their minds that they were able to just sync their energy up with these massive stones and lift them through their own energy.
Technology, man. That was our downfall.
Yeah, we got lazy and quit using our inner energy.
Yep.
She started flipping out on you.
But that's the kind of stuff you're going to hear on here. You never know. Because we never know. That's why the question mark.
Bro, I got Cheyenne.
Yeah.
Scared. She goes, she beat your
The
ass
energy.
once, she'll do it again.
I've also heard that it was sound waves, but
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that episode now.
Yeah.
That's right.
But then again, explain away the Baghdad batteries. When they weren't supposed to understand electricity.
Yep.
I don't know.
We'll see. Who knows?
We'll see.
Maybe one day we'll figure it all out and we'll know.
So now
I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not either. Because
I hope there's never a period in time where humanity is like, we have all the answers, we know it all. Because then what's left to live for if you just know it all?
Madison Mason, and
Yeah.
I love being able to go, I don't know. I'm going to go look this up and find out more about it.
Right. For sure.
Like Annabelle. There were things about Annabelle I didn't know. A lot of
Yeah.
stuff about Robert you told me that I wasn't aware of.
There was like everything about Robert I didn't know because up until 2 weeks ago, I didn't even know Robert was a thing.
I knew he was a thing, but I thought there were a lot of deaths connected with him. I knew there was a lot of misfortune, but I thought there was a lot of death involved.
Yeah.
To find out there wasn't a single one blows my mind.
Yeah.
And the fact that the kid, when Robert was a child, literally just said, "Okay, the doll's got my name. I'm going by my middle name now."
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a single child that I know now would do that.
No.
They would just share the name and be done.
Yeah.
And as an adult, without some serious mental issues, and I'm not saying he had mental issues, I'm just saying that's what you would expect.
Right.
It would be mental issues for an adult to blame things on a doll.
Yeah. And the fact that his wife was apparently okay with his relationship with this doll is a little interesting too. It kind of gives a little bit of credibility to it.
Yes. I think the moral of this story is get you somebody who understands your fear of a doll.
Or your love for a doll.
Or both.
Yeah.
Healthy respect for a doll.
Indeed. I hate dolls. Just saying.
My wife's got a doll collection. Have I told you this? She's got a doll collection, and from day one, it's creeped me out. Thankfully, she was understanding and keeps them in the closet now. But she used to put them on the bookshelf in the bedroom, and they would all just be staring at me all night long.
Oh God, no!
And
no,
for the first month, it was just me staring back, like, please don't move, just please.
Yeah, stay there. Yeah.
She used to have a cat that would jump off the top of her arm wall onto the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time that happened scared the hell out of me because my thought was, oh shit, one of the dolls.
Well, the dolls are trying to get me.
And then I realized it was just a cat.
There you go.
So that's why I've got a healthy respect for Annabelle and Robert, because you don't know.
Nope.
I want somebody, if somebody's watching and they're like, it's fake, prove it. Prove it's fake.
Yeah.
I mean, they can easily say prove it's real, but there's enough proof of stuff that has happened around them that they have to prove that all that stuff was coincidence.
Right. Yeah. I think with some stuff, especially this kind of stuff, it's almost easier, or it's almost harder to prove that it's fake than just believe in it.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's, especially with Robert, all this stuff that you said have happened, and these people apologizing and things go right. And it could all be coincidence, all of it. Yeah, definitely, it all could. You could easily say, well, people have bad luck, and then it turns to good luck, and assuming you even believe in luck. But that's just the way things go. Things go good, things go bad. It could all just be coincidence. All of it proved to me that all of it is coincidence.
Right. Yeah.
And he just happens to be there on either side of the good luck and the bad luck. Just
right. And it's like I said, back in 2015, so 6 years ago, he had upwards of 1,000 letters, the majority of which were apologies because something bad happened shortly after somebody visited him and disrespected him. 1,000 people doing that can't just be coincidence. I don't believe that there could be that many coincidences.
Yeah, there's just, at some point you have to ask yourself, where do I stop believing, oh, hey, that's just a coincidence, and start believing, okay, maybe I'm the one that's wrong.
When does it stop being coincidences and start being a pattern?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are the people that prove to me.
Hmm?
Dig into it, do all the research, crunch numbers for probability that it's all coincidence. Do something other than just say it's coincidence.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Because, like I said, I don't have to prove it's real because there's so much evidence saying, this is beyond likely that it's just all coincidence.
Right.
So prove it the other way.
Yeah.
It's like flat earthers. Prove to me the earth is round. You've seen the photos. And you constantly just want to say, well, that's a fisheye lens, even when it's obvious it's not a fisheye lens. Prove it. Go to space yourself, launch a rocket, whatever it is you've got to do to prove to me. If you can prove it, then I'm on your side.
Right. But yeah, I think that's a good spot to call it for the first episode.
Absolutely. We're doing this, weekly at the same time?
Yeah.
Awesome. I look forward to it. This was fun.
Yeah. I'll look forward to our next episode.
Yeah. Annabelle and Robert. You've got to prove. You've got all the stuff we could find now. Decide for yourself whether or not you believe it.
Yep. Perhaps it's possible.
Perhaps.